All right, everybody, welcome to the Sons of Liberty podcast, our 1 year anniversary and our first ever live podcast. So thank you guys so much for being here. Our next guest, I would say if you are paying any sort of attention in Massachusetts, needs little to no introduction. He is the co-founder and co-owner of the infamous, the illustrious gun store on Cape Cod.
You should tell him the name.
Cape Gun Works. Forgot to say. I mean, it's on his hat. I mean, it's right there. He's basically
Free advertising. You should be paying us.
Representing.
Toby Leary. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
And Mark, he was talking about how there's too much infighting and how we need to unite. And I don't think I mean, you've talked about this all the time. I don't think I've seen an issue that Massachusetts Republicans have united around more than this Second Amendment issue in light of H4885 and the emergency preamble that Maura Healey signed, and just the worst attack on the Second Amendment that we've seen in America, in American history. So, I mean, it's just, it's insane. So thank you for being here, Toby.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So can you give us just a little bit of a recap for people who haven't really been closely following the insanity over the past year when it comes to the gun bill?
Yeah, sure. It started about a year and a half ago, actually, in, I believe, February. The Speaker of the House, Ron Mariano, tasked Michael Day, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, with rewriting all of the gun laws in Massachusetts. And they basically started out with this listening tour that they just wanted to hear from people and say, what do you think should change? What's good about our laws? What's bad about our laws? They did 11 stops, and resoundingly, I was one of the tour stops. I think I was the 7th out of the 11th. And I was a speaker in Greenfield, even though the first tour was in Barnstable, right in my backyard. But regardless, I got number 7 in Greenfield, so I had to drive 4 hours to to be one of the panelists. But the truth of the matter is, we were lied to by Michael Day, who said nothing is on the table. This is really just, we're here to listen to the people of Massachusetts, and as the saying goes, the ears were open, but the mind was closed. They didn't listen to a thing that the people who went to these listening tour stops and overwhelmingly said, listen, we're not the problem. The problem is the system that allows violent criminals back out onto the street to reoffend, doesn't punish people for violent crime. We let them out of prison. Our prisons and jails are empty here in Massachusetts. We're closing them down. And there's a lot of evidence that we have a mandatory minimum 1 year in jail for using a gun in the commission of a felony or a felon in possession of a gun, and very rarely is that ever enforced. The worst of this was, I think, there's a felon on Cape Cod who's, I won't repeat his name, but they call him 135. He had 135 prior felony charges.
Wow.
He got caught he had 33 prior convictions of a felon in possession of a gun. They gave him, he could have been doing 45 years in jail for that alone. And they let him out in 3 or 4 years, I forget exactly how long it was. And he went on to kill Officer Sean Gannon and shot Nero, his dog, as well. Ultimately, Officer Gannon died in that shooting. And all the while, they say guns are to blame, or the people who aren't responsible are to blame. And so, the people started to take notice of what was going on. And fast forward to July of 2023, I guess it was, when Ron Mariano introduced this bill. By the way, Mike Day introduced this bill. It came out, I think it was 11 days after the listening tour stop ended. And it was a 140-something page bill.
So there's no way they actually listened to anything.
Well, not only that, the lie that nothing is on the table.
Yeah.
And remarkably, this bill sounded a lot like a lot of the other bills that were cropping up throughout the country. This was all what we call a Bruin response bill. If you go back to 2022, the Supreme Court ruled landmark decision out of New York is called the NYSERPA v. Bruin case. And it was basically just reiterating that the Heller decision in 2008 was good law. And instead of just leaving it to be, as Clarence Thomas wrote in the decision, a two-step approach to ruling on gun law. I know this gets very geeky and nerdy, but basically the way Massachusetts has got away with their avalanche of unconstitutional gun law is through this two-step approach or interest balancing approach or government interest balancing approach. So they would say it's in the government's best interest to uphold this law when really they're supposed to be upholding the best interests of the people.
Right.
Right? If you look at the state constitution, our legislators are tasked with enforcing or upholding the rights of the people. James Madison wrote about this in Federalist 49, that the power, the true fountain of power resides in the people. And government gets its power or its authority from the consent of the people. He goes on to say that the most important branch of government is the legislature because they are numerous, they're from the blood of the people, and they have a constitutional, or actually it says a confidential responsibility to defend the rights of the people. And unfortunately, somewhere along the line, they lost their way and stopped paying attention to the founding documents, the Constitution. Even the Mass Constitution has language very similar. And now they see themselves as the giver of rights or the grantor. And they're not. We know from our foundation of our nation that our rights are granted by God, our Creator, and they are unalienable or unalienable. What does that mean? You can't put attachments, conditions, encumbrances, you can't put roadblocks, you can't put pitfalls, you can't put hurdles to jump over. But yet here we are in 2024 trying to defend our right to keep and bear arms, not to mention other fundamental rights. And our government has got it so wrong for so long that the people have been lulled into this sense of Stockholm syndrome, where we get used to asking permission for our rights instead of just exercising our rights. And we saw the worst version of this happen a year ago when the House of Representatives came out with HD 4420, which ultimately became known as the law that passed in July of this year, H 4885, or the Chapter 135 of the Acts of 2024. Came out of conference committee July 17th at like 9 p.m. It was passed by the House and the Senate on the 18th, which happened to be my birthday. Happy birthday, Toby. And less than a week later, the governor signed it into law. It's a 116-page bill in its final version, and I promise you nobody read it.
Yeah.
And
all like the liberty, what's the word? All of the lawyer like gobbledygook that just fills the most legislation really. But the average person can understand. I guarantee you, our average legislature also probably cannot
They didn't even want to read it. Let's put it that way. They were told by the speaker, "You're voting for this," and they got in line and complied. There was a few exemptions by the people who live in the western part of the state that are very pro-Second Amendment, and they know they wouldn't be reelected if they voted for it. So they get the hall pass by the speaker, but they use this bludgeon of what a lot of people don't know is the base salary for lawmakers in Massachusetts is $74,000. No one's surviving on a $74,000 salary, right? So how they're making their money is through committee assignments, through stipends. Get this, out of the 160 House of Representatives in the Mass State House, 149 of them are leadership pay. They get leadership.
That's crazy.
So all but 11 of members of the House of Representatives are considered leaders. And then they get committee assignments. They either are chair or co-chair, and that's how they make their money. A lot of times their salary is doubled by the amount of money. Now, in all of this, there was one police chief in Ware PD, Ware, Massachusetts, Sean Crevier, who stood up for the Constitution. He said, "I swore the same oath of office as the legislature did. I need to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic." And he said, "Listen, your rights are about to be infringed. call your legislator, tell them to vote no on this bill. Well, the state ethics committee sent him a 7-page letter, single-spaced, and told him that he has violated the conflict of interest law 4 times by urging people to call their legislator and stand up for the Constitution. I can't make this stuff up.
That's crazy.
This is equivalent to like when the mob shows up at a nice restaurant like this and says, hey, you got a nice thing going here. I'd hate to see something happen to it. And we're in the business of protection. We can keep this place from burning to the ground. That's exactly what the state ethics committee did to Sean Crevier for standing up for the Constitution. Now, granted, there's plenty of police chiefs that stand up at press conferences every time gun control legislation is passed and step up to the microphone and tell everyone how this is going to make our streets safer and, we're going to get criminals off the street, et cetera. And yet they never get a ethics violation letter. Isn't that interesting?
Interesting.
But the state ignores the worst version of this happening right under their nose in the State House, where they use these committee assignments, their leadership pay, their stipends, as more than double their base salary in order to get compliance. So who are they actually representing? Are they representing the Speaker of the House, or are they representing the people that sent them there to be their representatives? And somewhere along the line, we lost, the script has been flipped, if you will, and they lost their fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer, to the constituent, and now they serve in their own government interest. They serve in their own party's interest, if you will. It is the worst version of crony capitalism and conflict of interest happening, in broad daylight, without apology, and nobody is holding them accountable. And this bill, as you point out, I know I took the long way to get here.
It's the weave.
Is this coming full circle and waking up people who are sick and tired of being the whipping post and being the scapegoat every time a negative outcome happens with a firearm. And news media has been pounding the drum for 30, 40 years that if it wasn't for you clinging to your God and your gun and your Bible, none of this would have happened. That's the message they've been saying. And the people are saying, wait a minute, how is making laws for 99.9% of the population for the criminal acts of the 0.01% of the population efficient, lawful, and how does that make any sense? We wouldn't tolerate it with any other aspect of society. We a lot of times will say it's equivalent to trying to solve the problem of drunk driving by making it harder for sober people to buy cars and operate an automobile.
Yeah.
That would never fly. No one would go, hey, that's a good idea. Let's do that.
Or trying to fix like a mental wellness problem by throwing a bunch of totally normal people into insane asylums.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. And I would also argue that what's really waking people up is this fact that a simple majority in the State House is all it takes now, and a complicit governor to completely eviscerate and gut and change forever an enumerated right in our federal and state constitution.
Don't get me started about that, Governor. Oh my God.
It's interesting. I wonder where Maura Healey ranks in terms of tyrants in American history. Because if you think about it, I don't know if people remember, but before she was Attorney General.
Right.
And I think it was in 2016, it was a crazy gun grab. She basically wrote law as Attorney General overnight. I don't know, where do you think that she ranks if you had to?
Well, I think for one thing, she hates people who take personal responsibility for their own safety. She hates gun owners. There's no question about it. That was evidence in 2016, the day that will live in infamy. Another birthday that she ruined, by the way.
Oh my God.
That was 7/20/2016. It seems to be happening. I'm out on the golf course in Duxbury playing golf with my family to celebrate my birthday, and my phone blows up. You better get to the shop. Something's going down. And I had no idea what was going down until I got back, and we were open till midnight that night. But yes, she is trying to finish the job of Thomas Gage, who was the governor of Massachusetts, who was put up to the task to go, get this is how ironic it is, to go finish the job of King George III when he sends the Redcoats to Concord and Lexington for what? To seize the guns from the patriots, the colonists, the farmers, to seize the shot, the powder, the firearms, and the caps and the balls. And guess what happened? The patriots, similarly to the 100,000 people that signed our petition here in Massachusetts over the past 2 months, similar to them, they put a line in the sand and said, no, you've gone way too far. You're overstepping your bounds, and we will not comply. That's exactly the message. And we And what was the result of that? Shot heard around the world was the greatest country this world has ever seen being formed, with small government and personal responsibility being paramount and key, not to mention, as Patrick Henry wrote, that it is for a religious and a moral people. It doesn't work any other way. And what has happened in the last 60, 70 years in this country is we have tried everything to eviscerate the morality and God from our country, from taking down statues and taking down monuments and taking down Ten Commandments out of the places like courtrooms, which makes zero sense if you think about it, and all to erase our nation's past and history. It comes as no surprise that the person who is running for president right now is trying to be unburdened, the future unburdened by
what has
past, right? Whatever the heck the saying is. And that is a direct attack on those monuments, those landmarks of our nation's foundation and our history.
Yeah. Hunter and I just went to a local Turning Point event up at UNH, and the speaker was Lily Tang Williams. She survived Mao's China, and she came back, and now she's running for Congress. And it's crazy, like the similarities between Mao's Cultural Revolution in the 60s to America today. I mean, you can broaden it. You could say Massachusetts, like the tearing down of statues, the disarming of the citizenry. It's so similar, and it's eerily so. And something she kept repeating in her speech was just how scared she was. She would see that and get like PTSD and be like, what country am I living in right now?
Right.
And we as citizens of Massachusetts, we don't really, we've grown up so dare I say the word privilege, but really American privilege. We've grown up with American privilege that we don't realize that this could all end. The only reason it started was that whole story you just gave, was people taking personal responsibility and people dying for freedom.
Yeah.
And freedom ain't free. And it's coming back around, unfortunately.
And exactly what you're pointing out, the Second Amendment wasn't so that we could go deer hunting. It wasn't so that we could go target shooting with our friends. It wasn't so that we could even defend our homes, although those are all benefits of the Second Amendment. It was a tyranny safety relief valve. That's really what it is, because Thomas Gage and King George III had plans for the colonists that they wouldn't have gone along with. The only thing that was in the way was the arms that the people possessed. And the same thing is true today. They have plans for us that we would not go along with. And they know the only thing standing in the way of the total steamrolling of the rights of the people is the Second Amendment.
For sure. And I think we need to, when we talk about this debate, not get caught up in all the extra stuff and bring up that point. Because sometimes the left is like, oh, well, your guns aren't going to do anything against the government anyway. They have all these nukes and this technology. But I think you should ask, Vietnam about that, or ask Afghanistan about that, and ask the Taliban about that, because we've spent trillions of dollars and we've spent thousands of American lives over there with all of our military technology, and they basically beat us. So I think that argument is the best one, and the way we should be approaching it as conservatives, because, like you said, that's the only thing the Second Amendment is actually for.
Thou dost protest too much, is what I say to that, right? If they're not worried at all about it, then let us have whatever arms are in common and ordinary use.
Yeah.
Bearable arms should be available to anyone in this country who is not a prohibited person, right?
I think
That's the way it goes. And the fact that they don't want to allow me that freedom, I think tips their hand in a way that doesn't look good for them.
Yeah.
I think when we did our first podcast with you, I asked you about recreational bazookas, but we don't have to talk about that here. I want to ask a question about the fallout of the bill, because I think it was a rush, that 2 months of getting signatures, but now it's into law. For people who don't know, Maura Healey, you want to talk about the emergency preamble a bit, because you had the signatures, they knew you were going to get the signatures, then what happened?
Yeah, it's a great point, Hunter. So 71 days after Maura Healey signed this into law, laws take effect 90 days after they're signed into law. 71 days after she signed it, they knew that we were going to get enough votes to get this law suspended, which was 49,716, but who's counting? The Secretary of State's office must have reported to her that, yeah, they're getting a lot of certified signatures. So 71 days after the fact, she goes in and signs an emergency preamble. To my knowledge, this has never been done retroactively. It's been done at the time of signing by the legislature. It's been done at the time of signing by governors, but it's never been done 71 days after the fact. This was a purely political move to silence the voice of over 100,000 people in this state, to totally interfere with the constitutional process under Article 48, and to also get involved in the democratic process, which the left loves to tout everything as a threat to democracy, but yet here they are getting involved in the actual democratic process. And I'd love to see them spin that, how they're not interfering with the democratic process.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, how is Maura Healey going to come back from this? Like, how did she think she can sign an emergency preamble and silence the voice of 100,000 people and not think that when the ballot question comes up in 2026, when she is also up for re-election, how does she not think that's going to affect her? Because there are so many gun owners who don't vote, but they are going to come out to vote for that ballot question and then hopefully vote Republican down ballot. And that will affect her. Like, how does she think she can get away with this, politically speaking?
Well, unfortunately, this state has got away with decades of tyrannical, unconstitutional behavior. I went through the first 18 articles of the Mass Constitution, and by my quick read of it, and I'm just a layperson, but I don't think it would take a legal scholar to come to the same conclusion, that Maura Healey and the state legislature are in violation of 6 out of the 18 articles, first 18 articles of the state constitution. So she signed this, interfered with the voice of 100,000 people, and you're right, I hope she's trembling about that re-election in 2026. But we have an immediate need this November 5th to hold every single legislator accountable for their vote on Election Day this Tuesday, and send a resounding message to her that you really screwed up. You screwed up this time. The fact of the matter is you lack the constitutional authority to do what you did, and you violated your oath of office in the process. And for those reasons, you should not be rewarded with your job back on November 6th, on November 5th. You should be sent home to do some work around the house, spend some more time with the family, pursue other interests, whatever it is you want to do.
Go to rehab,
Whatever it is you want to do. But you should not get to go back to the people's house where you have displayed yourself to be an unfaithful representative or senator or governor, and you've violated the trust of the people that sent you there to represent them.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's interesting, too. An emergency preamble is meant for an emergency. And she did it 71 days after. So that kind of sounds like incompetent leadership to me. If there was really an emergency, shouldn't you have acted earlier? Sounds kind of familiar to another Democratic governor from Minnesota who waited during the Summer of Love in 2020. But that's neither here nor there.
Supposed to actually do anything until after the riots?
Yeah, basically. Just not doing anything until after the emergency is over and you can gain politically from it. Sounds like the Democratic playbook right there. But how I want to talk more about the fallout of this. How are our gun stores, like, I'm sure you know gun stores. How many gun stores were involved in the signing of the petitions?
Well, we were represented in about 100 locations throughout the state. Businesses, there was gun stores, sportsmen's clubs, businesses like hardware stores, automotive repair shops, and whatnot. So I don't think we were in every gun store, but there was a few that just saw it as a waste of time. But for the most part, overwhelmingly, we had the support of most of the gun stores and in this state, as well as many other shops, if you will. So
are some having to close down now after this bill?
Yeah, there's one shop I know that closed down just because they were reaching retirement age anyway, and they said it's just not worth trying to spin up or try to readjust or pivot to try to stay open. Every gun store right now is pivoting and trying to figure out how to keep the lights on, how to keep people gainfully employed, how to not lose jobs, lose their livelihoods, lose their business in the process. So that's really there is irreparable harm and irreparable damage that is a result of this bill that I think will take years and years to recover from.
Man, that's crazy. Yeah. So this is Massachusetts Young Conservatives. How do do you see that young people are getting more involved or more interested in the Second Amendment, or less involved and less interested in the Second Amendment, just from your bird's eye view, I suppose?
Well, from everything I see, I think the future is very hopeful with the young generation, I believe. Tons of kids, or I say kids, I'm dating myself, but 18 to 21-year-olds are coming in, getting licensed. Even you can get an FID card in this state at 15. So I've seen kids as young as 14 getting involved, taking the class to get their FID card so they can go hunt or go shoot or whatever. And they become passionate gun owners. And I think they're, I love this whole event, what's going on. I love what you guys are doing. I think that's the future. And I believe that the young generation isn't buying what the media and everybody else is telling them. They're saying, you know what, I have eyes, I can see, and I don't listen to mainstream media so much. There's great alternative media out there like this show. And I believe that the more that proliferates, the better off we'll be. And I think the Second Amendment is in really good hands with the next generation.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Toby, for coming on the show. Just before you head out, would you want to plug Cape Gunworks, what you do, rapid fire, all that stuff?
Yeah, great. You can always check out our content on at Cape Gunworks throughout whatever social media you follow. Also, Rapid Fire Radio. I did my show from 4 to 6 p.m. tonight. We go live every Wednesday from 4 to 6. We also do a radio show on Sundays on WXTK and on Saturdays on WCRN. So, you can just Google it and find Rapid Fire Radio on Spotify and all the podcasts as well. But wherever you go for social media, you'll find us, and happy to be doing it. And thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Toby. Thanks for leading this fight. All right, everybody. Welcome back to our first ever live Sons of Liberty podcast. We're gonna come back in with Ken Sweezey. He is running in the 6th Plymouth District in Massachusetts, and we're gonna have him come up and share about himself, his campaign, and why you should vote for him on Election Day. Ken Sweezey, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Ken, so you're running in the 6th Plymouth District.
Sir.
Can you just real quick, what are the towns?
Yeah.
Is that just a part of the town of Plymouth, or like?
No. So of
Plymouth
course
County.
this is
Plymouth County. Okay.
Real fun
I'm from the
one.
Cape. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we won't hold that against you. So 6th Plymouth is actually all of Duxbury, most of Pembroke, most of Hanson, half of Halifax, and 1 precinct in Marshfield. So the former representative was on the redistricting committee in 2022, so he got a good look at the numbers
Oh, nice.
today, when they were redrawing the line. So
It's ridiculous that they can just do that. I don't understand why you can just redraw the lines, because it seems like they redraw the lines just so that there can be more Democrat-leaning towns in a certain district.
yeah.
And then
Yeah, everyone up there is out for themselves. That's kind of how
Yeah.
it goes. That's unfortunately a part of the game. But
Yeah.
6
So-
more years, I'll redraw them again. So.
Sounds good.
Yeah, give Republicans a little bit.
Yeah, there you go.
So what are you doing differently than the former politicians who are just out to make a buck or do it for themselves?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. So as far as just my background a little bit, so I grew up in the district. I'm one of very few people that actually was born and raised in the district that they're running for, which I think is very refreshing. I also have a family who owns a small business over in a neighboring town of Whitman. My background was as a civilian law enforcement employee. I was a forensic scientist for years. That's what I'm trained in.
Wow.
And when the pandemic happened, crime just got so much worse, and so-called leaders were running our states, towns, country into the ground. And that's what inspired me to run. So I think, it was just a very natural, organic process. I genuinely had no interest of ever running. I was well-read, but nothing beyond that politically. I thought I was going to live and die as a forensic scientist, and that was going to be my career. I loved it, but it just came to a point in the road where I was like, we need to do more, because for everything I think I'm doing well, we solve one case, there's 2 more that come in its place. So it was just time to get to a more of a system level type of thing to actually help people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're how old again?
Yeah, I'm 29, so I
Ooh.
classify as a young conservative.
There
That's
you go.
awesome.
You
I
made
think
it.
so.
So, which is funny though, and I like that you bring that up, because a big point that my opponent has actually brought up is that, oh, well, she has experience and I can't have experience. So, I mean, like I said, I grew up in a small business. It was a fence company, manual labor job. I can tell you my opponent's never done manual labor a day in her life. And unfortunately, so I was with St. Louis Metropolitan Police. So this wasn't, like some small town police department. I mean, in 4 years, I worked over 200 murder cases.
Wow.
For reference, the whole state of Massachusetts only had about 64 murders. The city of St. Louis is only 300,000 people, and it had over 200 murders. It's the most dangerous city in America per capita, top
Wow.
3 every year. And it got a whole lot worse during the pandemic. So to say I don't have experience, don't have enough life experience, I was like, well, sorry that your real estate law firm is so taxing apparently, but they were trying to swing it, right? Because that's the only thing that they had. But
Yep.
there was a lot of it was really an organic path
Yep.
that got me here.
Yeah, the only experience that really matters is the experience that gives you wisdom.
Right.
And I mean, that is a job that, man, you either become, it seems from an outsider's perspective, you either become jaded or you learn, or you learn about human nature, and then it gives you an overwhelming desire to want to help people.
Yeah,
And
100%.
and want to, help human nature, basically.
100%, and you're touching on that the same that Toby did. And first of all, somehow, and I just mentioned it to him on his way out, in 3 years, because I ran in 22 as well, and in 3 years somehow that was the first time I ever heard Toby Leary speak, and,
Wow.
and that was incredible. And the work that Toby does is amazing, and glad to hopefully be on the front lines as well, fighting against all the craziness that you guys just talked about. But what he touched on and what you're touching on too is that, yeah, we have a lot of problems in this state and in the country, unfortunately, but I don't run a doom and gloom type of campaign. I think it's really easy for people to say, and we joke and say in jest like, oh, my opponent or the Democrats or whoever is doing this or that. But Toby has it 100% right, that the future is very, very bright. Mm-hmm. And there's, like I tell people all the time, that this is a hope-filled campaign. There's a lot of people that are, I'll say our age,
Yeah.
if I may, our age,
Thank you.
is, young men are the most conservative generation and demographic in the country right now, and I think that's going to do a lot of good for us. It's a pendulum, right? It always swings back, and what you guys brought up a little bit earlier about past and present and things like that, and Reagan said we're only ever one generation away from tyranny, and I think fortunately we're many more away, because the younger generation is waking up and seeing with their eyes, like Toby said, that there's a lot that needs to be fixed, and we have the ability, the skills, the decision making, to be able to do so and see that we're being lied to.
Yeah. Young conservatives are the future of this state, and we need to keep it that way.
Amen. And just to ask one question about actually running for office, because very few, I've ran for office, but we do the podcast. Sam hasn't yet because he's a coward. But
Wow, tough crowd.
But
You waited for the live podcast to do that too, yeah.
No, every other dude, every other one.
But anyway, I'm guessing. So you were 27 when you first ran. I'm guessing you knew absolutely nothing about running a
Right,
campaign. 'Cause
yeah.
That's usually the
Yeah.
first one. That's what happens.
Yeah,
So-
fortunately, I would say to that actually, because not a lot of people step up to help a new 27-year-old running for office against a 10-year incumbent. And your next guest is one of only 2 people that helped me in the entire state of Massachusetts. So no matter what, I always give a lot of props to Geoff Diehl because he stepped up many times for our party and for our state, and he stepped up for me 2 years ago as well. So I always like to shout out Geoff as well, and appreciate what he did for me.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I definitely knew nothing. So.
So what do you think the difference? Like, what have you learned since last election that's gonna
100%.
make you win this time?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of different things, which is great. You know, one thing I definitely encourage anybody running for office is to learn how to delegate, and I didn't do a great job of that, as I'm sure Geoff can attest as well, or anyone who's run. You know, the first time around, you know, I thought, oh, well, I have to be, the only way to do it is by brute force. So I'd be out knocking doors all day, and then I'd get home and do my social media, and then my fundraising emails, and then write letters, and set up my calls, and I was going to bed at 2 a.m. every night for months. And it's like, you're not giving your best if you're running on 4 or 5 hours of sleep, plus working full time and doing all this. But I would tell a lot of people, especially young people, that we have a massive advantage when running for office because there's something about just the older generation. Right now, I mean, I think because of the sitting president and even just presidential candidates from you know, recent years, that people are a little bit sick and tired of the status quo and what's been going on, and that includes both parties as well, generally speaking, that people, I genuinely thought 2 years ago, the biggest hindrance that I would have to get elected was being young. I thought they would open up the door and they would not take me seriously, even after everything we just talked about. And that was probably my biggest asset.
Wow.
It really was. And I'm sure that you saw this as well, that people love the younger generation getting involved. And they also have a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope out there. And that doesn't have to do with what generation you're from or what even party you're from, because, you know, obviously to win, you don't just appeal to conservatives and Republicans. But it's a big asset. Being a young candidate is an asset, one, because you can door knock every day, all day, physically, which is good. But there's a lot of positive reception. So that's one big thing I've learned. But yeah, just making sure that you're plugged in and understanding all the campaigning now is much more expensive. And I argue, not to downgrade anybody who's ran before, but I'd argue it's much harder because of mail-in balloting and just the proliferation of different types of media. I mean, whether you have podcasts or Facebook or Instagram or YouTube and streaming and all those things. Like last time we were just, doing mail and a little bit of social advertising, and now people are calling me that during the first, intermission of a hockey game that they're streaming, they're getting my ads and stuff. Now it's so different than what you expect thinking, especially for just like, you think of a small, quote unquote, lowly state rep race. It's just 45,000 people per state rep seat population wise, but there's a lot that goes into it logistically. And we really learned that throughout the first cycle, and going into this one was a big learning experience, and delegating.
There you go.
Was good.
Yeah, I think we need more young people to run for office because we should know how to do social media better than the more aged.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Jeff said it, not me. Jeff said it. Thank
Somebody
you, Ken.
said it.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
Yeah, no, thank you guys so much. And for anyone who's listening out there who happens to be in the 6 Plymouth, check us out on social media, SweezeyForStateRep.com. We only got 6 days left. And excited, I think, as everybody is to get there.
Yeah,
Cool.
vote
Thank
early
you guys
and
for
vote
everything
often.
you do. So,
Of course.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
All right, who's ready for the real deal? Where's the Eye of the Tiger music? Geoff Diehl, everybody.
You can't handle the truth. Right? Colonel Jessup, isn't that what he said?
Oh, my God.
Thanks, guys, for having me on. And I want to also thank the audience for being here. This is awesome. The venue, they're great with us, too, right?
Yeah.
The venues, this is nice. Great setup.
Oh, yeah.
I notice one thing, and if you guys are okay with it, can I invite the audience at the end to maybe come up with a question or two?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
That's a great idea.
I just think that the more we hear of, maybe you guys are formulating ideas out there, I'm the real deal. I will tell you the truth. I promise you. We'll hold nothing back. There's a lot of folks here that, from my Whitman Republican Town Committee, folks that have supported me over the years. from the beginning, way back in 2000. Started running in 2009. I filed in February of 2009 because I knew I'd need 2 years to get to every door I could possibly get to in the 3 towns when I ran for state representative. And I got to tell you, when I worked on the ballot question where we repealed the gas tax indexing in 2014, we went everywhere across the state. Yep. Not a lot of sleep in those days, but you know what? I had young kids at the time, so no sleep anyway. You just might as well keep going. But running for U.S. Senate, running for governor, obviously you're out there crisscrossing the state all the time. I mean, politics comes with bleary eyes and a lot of coffee, but it is worth it because you have people like Ken Sweezey who are now running that next generation that's taking the baton from us, who have either run too much or are just can't do it anymore. It takes a lot out of you, let's put it that way. But I'm here to help. And I'm here to, again, offer any advice I've learned over 15 plus years on the trail. I will say one thing, too, no gloom and doom, that theory or that philosophy. We're going to win the presidency on Tuesday. You guys know this, right? On November 5th. The one thing I will say, in 2016, I saw Trump on the horizon. I endorsed him in late 15 and was behind him in 16. I was the lone Republican on Beacon Hill who was elected, who supported him. And but I saw what I think everybody saw a few months later, and I think I saw what people see now, and that is he's the last real chance to keep our democracy in place, the last chance to keep government in check, and I think the last chance to make sure that we maintain our individual freedoms that we lost during the pandemic and all those things. So anyway, I think that we've got great times ahead of us. And by the way, I know you guys have questions. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I just want to go off here for a second. How awesome is it that people like Tulsi Gabbard have switched over to the Republican Party, and people like Elon Musk have had that ideological shift, and people like RFK Jr. are out there saying, "Don't vote for me, vote for Donald." Like, we're seeing coalitions that 2 years ago would never have imagined these coalitions coming together to push Donald Trump over the finish line. And by the way, speaking of not expecting things, J.D. Vance, what an awesome pick he was for vice president, right? I mean, that guy is a genius. Like, I literally look at him, I'm like, this guy is brilliant. And we need, my daughter's going to an Ivy League college, and she's a freshman. And by the way, she is staying conservative, and she's going to church on Sundays at college. I love it. But I will say, thank you, Marjorie. But I will say, I do think that the young folks are moving that way, and even kids in Ivies and guys like J.D. Vance who went to Yale. I mean, he had the background that obviously set him up, but he went to Yale, didn't get brainwashed. I think that the young kids now are going to Ivies for the career decisions and not necessarily getting sucked in like they used to. So I love that for our kids. You guys clearly not brainwashed, and I want to thank you again for having me on. Sorry for grabbing that spotlight for the first few seconds.
No, this is great.
We don't even need to ask
Thanks,
questions.
Senator. Yeah.
Keep going.
Well, I was going to be like, we're going to get into all
You
this
can
stuff
tell.
about young
I haven't run
conservatives,
for-
but like,
I haven't
we
been-
just got into that.
I haven't been running for office. I had to grab a microphone, right? Anyway,
So
please go ahead.
now, so you've been in the world of politics, running for office time and time again, and then now you're a Republican state committeeman. What is it? How different is it? Like,
It's not paid. That's a joke.
What are the
I
different,
would have
like,
done the
job
state rep job not paid if I could have. Yeah.
what are like the job descriptions, and how have you like filled those roles as?
Yeah. So when I was a state representative, obviously your goal is to represent the interest of all the districts. Republican, Democrat, independent, nonpartisan. Really, I mean, truthfully, the business of the state should be mostly nonpartisan. Unfortunately, certain things get turned into political issues. The wedge issues. Abortion gets brought up, the gun issue, like Toby talked about earlier. Those are things that get brought up, especially in election time. But truthfully, what most people do, and if you actually look at my state rep record, I voted with the Speaker of the House probably 60-70% of the time, not on major ideological issues, but just getting business done for the state, funding local law enforcement, funding your police forces, funding everything that the state needs to do. We agree mostly up on Beacon Hill about a lot of those things. The problem is there's those wedge issues that really determine kind of the future of the state. For example, the millionaire's tax, right? That was something that, as a state legislator, I actually voted in the Constitutional Convention up there it had to go twice to Constitutional Convention, in two separate sessions before it was then put on a ballot. So I voted when I was in office twice against it, although the supermajority of Democrats voted for it. But that's why it made it to the ballot, was changing our actual Constitution so that there would be a second tier of taxation, which unfortunately, as we've seen, is driving capital out of the state. So I knew it was a mistake. We shouldn't do it. Theoretically, we should repeal it, but the problem is it's a massive effort to repeal it as well. The best thing to do is elect a Republican governor, which I tried to do last session. But anyway, but what does that do compared to state committeeman on the Republican Party? State committee on the Republican Party is more of a steering committee. What we try to do is, keep the party active and afloat economically and helping recruit candidates to make sure, good candidates, making sure that they run. And then the other thing you try to do is, or you do, is you pick, I said do. You say,
I wasn't going to say it.
I knew you were thinking it. You try to pick good leaders for the party. So when you're on state committee, there's 40 men, there's 40 women. And what they do is they elect the chairman and they elect, or chairwoman, and they elect the state committee man and national committee man, national committee woman. Those two people and it's the chair go to DC and they elect the national party chair and the board, the treasurer, the secretary, and all that. So the people that we pick in the party at the Massachusetts level have a very big impact down in Washington, D.C.
So, not to be doom and gloom.
Yeah.
But
well, we have to face the fact that we have some challenges
right.
as Republicans in the state.
Yeah, to fix a problem, you have to acknowledge there is a problem. So, what has been going on with the Republican Party in Massachusetts for the last, 50 years? I think it's 8% of Massachusetts residents are registered Republican.
Yeah, I think when I first started running, I think it was like 15%, and it's like a slow bleed turned into a fast trickle, and it's been worse. But the one thing I will say is the Democrat Party has also been seeing tremendous loss. I mean, the biggest party in Massachusetts now is the independent group out there that votes. Over 60%, probably over 65% at this point. So I think everybody tries to court those independent voters, but the Democrats do have the advantage when it comes to registration, which is always difficult. I will say, though, having a smaller Republican Party makes it, I don't want to say easier, but when I ran for U.S. Senate and I ran for governor, I had to win the convention, in 2018 for U.S. Senate against two other people. When you have a small audience to try to broadcast your message to, you might, the joke is you can swing a dead cat and hit all the Republicans in the state. But it's the fact is, the convention usually gets about 2,000 to 3,000 people. If I've already been reaching a lot of those people and then they all come to convention, I had a better shot of winning those conventions than I did. I actually got 71% versus Charlie Baker when he ran the time before. But who's counting? Right? But the point was, I think I represented the conservative values that this Massachusetts Republican Party actually has. And I think Mark actually talked at the beginning about South Shore, North Shore, and how the South Shore, and I've always believed what he believes, which is that the South Shore is the workhorse for the party. I think the Midwestern part of the state, the Worcester area, is the barometer, and I think the North Shore are the Republican elite that sort of benefit from all the hard work that we try to do all the time and the causes that we take. I mean, Toby's the one doing all the hard work on the gun issue. I was the one that led the gas tax thing. I mean, when it comes to workhorse, it always comes from the South Shore region or the Cape area. But that's I guess what I'm trying to talk about more, though, is that whole moderate versus conservative. And then people would say to me, "Oh, you're too conservative when you run when you're running for Massachusetts." And I want to say, well, how am I that conservative when I used to be a Democrat back in 2008? I mean, granted, I was probably a blue dog Democrat, but the fact of the matter was, what are the issues that makes me such a radical conservative? And I think what we've seen nationally is this discussion is the same thing. It's that Donald Trump, they're saying he's such a radical to the right. Well, he used to be a major Democrat donor.
Yeah.
Okay, he's not a radical to the right. The Democrat Party has just moved so far left.
Yeah, well, there's a video surfacing of him on The View in 2016, and they're like, "Oh my!" Like Whoopi Goldberg is like, "Oh my gosh, Trump, we love you."
Whoopi and Joy, the absolute antithesis of their attitudes. But yeah, no. How do those shows, women? How do those shows stay on? I don't even know. It's crazy.
Do you secretly watch them?
Can we repeal The View and yeah? Is that?
I was just saying, are they secretly watching them?
My wife watches. She puts them on, I think, just to get herself angry. It's like, she could just talk to me to get angry if she wants to get angry. Right? But anyway, no, I took the dog out. I take the dog out all the time. Anyway, but there's this fight in Massachusetts between the moderate. You have to be more like the Democrat to win. Guess what? You're seeing it play out right now with John Deaton. If you're going to give the Massachusetts voters a true, full-blown, crazy Democrat like Elizabeth Warren, or the moderate Republican that says he's pretty much like a Democrat in John Deaton, you're going to get Elizabeth Warren reelected. John Deaton can't win the message issue of saying, I believe the same things that Elizabeth Warren believes. She's just crazy. Oh, and by the way, we both hate Donald Trump. That means that every Republican, because in Massachusetts, most Republicans in this party in Massachusetts like Donald Trump. He's going to get a pretty good number in Massachusetts.
Especially with Kennedy's supporting Trump now.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And the depressed vote by the Democrats because the Kamala campaign, that Joy and Brat is going down, with Tim Walz, crazy Tim Walz. Anyway, that whole thing is going down, so that the enthusiasm in the state is pretty low. It's going to be a good number for Trump. Not a great number, but it's going to be a better number than he had in the past, is what I expect. But again, I think, as I said at the beginning, I think Trump wins this whole thing, and we have to really build on that momentum as a state party.
For sure.
In saying, look, you guys in Massachusetts reject this guy, but the fact of the matter is the whole country understands what he's all about. We just have to articulate that message, kind of like J.D. Vance did. Really say, I'm not Donald Trump, but I'm also very much a supporter of what his policies are. That's how we would succeed here in Massachusetts, to say, look, nobody's Donald Trump. I mean, the guy is just an entity of his own. We will never see another guy. I've never seen somebody like him. I never think I will see anybody like him again in the political circles. But that being said, we have to say that what he's done to take America under his wing and basically be a pro-American candidate that we all can get behind. I think that's where we have to go for the future, is say that we are with Trump, spiritually as he's president. I mean, if you keep denying him once he's in office in a few weeks or a few months, if you keep denying him as a Massachusetts Republican, you're just cutting your own throat when you want to be elected.
For sure.
So that's it. So I think you'll see a lot of born-again Trump folks on Beacon Hill. I loved him the whole time. I loved him. Yeah, not really.
No kidding. Yeah. So, we in Massachusetts, excuse me. What was that? 1, 2.
Testing.
We good?
I'm gone. Now I'm here.
Okay. We're back.
There was a big question. It was Kamala.
It was Kamala.
It was the spirit of Kamala.
James Carvell cut our mic somehow.
So,
Steve Bannon freed last night, right? Middle of the night. Yay.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Round of applause for that.
Yep.
So, we as conservatives, we understand that if you want to win in the state, you got to convince independents. Because like you said, they're the largest voting swath.
Squawk.
Swath.
Squad.
In the state. And then you look at the national level, it's kind of, it's the same thing. I believe independent, on a national level, I believe there are more independents than in either party.
Yeah.
But in any case, there are more moderates than there are far left or far right. So when you have a candidate like Kamala saying, the only time I've ever seen her say anything confidently was yelling at those Christians who said Jesus is Lord at a rally, and she said oh, I think you're at the wrong rally. I think you're supposed to go to the one down the street.
She actually was pretty correct. If you're pro God, that's the wrong party to be in right now.
Fair. Yeah. But it's if you're trying to appeal to independents, if you're Kamala trying to get elected, why would you say something like that? That's just...
And that's the other thing about Massachusetts, too, is coalitions. So we've got Lisa sitting there in the back. She's a pro-parental rights activist, right there. And a lot of those parental right groups, when I was out there campaigning this last cycle, especially during the lockdown, that's what really, I'm going to say the word, pissed me off when Charlie Baker locked us down, shut down businesses, forced our kids to have masks on longer than they should have. A lot of that stuff helped spark me to actually get back in the ring and run again. And when I talked to the parental rights groups, they were the first real organized group in 2021 that I said, wow, look at this across the state. I was up in think I was in Billerica for a standout, and they were so passionate about what they were doing. I said, thank God. And they weren't Republicans. They were like independents or even light Democrats, but they were like, this is wrong. And they started running for a school committee, and they started winning seats, but they were questioning what was going on with the masks on kids. And I said, okay, maybe the vibe is finally here in this state. Of course, 2 years later, I was completely wrong, but I did feel like our state was actually saying the pandemic was wrong, let's switch gears. And so that parental right group, these coalition groups are the other key. It's not Republican, Democrat, Independent, it's coalition groups. You know, when you actually see, the supposed grievance with Puerto Rico, that joke from that comedian, right? But you see people from Puerto Rico going, it was a joke, I don't mind it, it's fine, right? You start to realize that you can't just define people by their ethnicity or their culture. There are a lot of conservatives. When I actually was running this time, I got invited by the Indian community. Now, I don't mean Native American, I'm talking about people from India who've come here. There's 80,000 people from India that have moved to Massachusetts. In New England, over 250,000 people from India live in this state. They have incredible backgrounds. They work in high tech, in medical fields like surgery. They're high income, incredibly pro-family. They actually hire extra teachers for their kids at early ages to make sure that the kids get good educations. These are conservative people that just need to latch on to the Republican Party because they haven't been made aware of it. They see Democrats in the hospitals or in the high tech world, and they think that's where I've got to be. The other
well, they don't need to join the Republican Party. They just need to change it and become the Republican Party.
Well, that's it.
And
get in it. And I'd love to see
and get the rhinos.
Vivek Ramaswamy. I thought was a genius. Is a genius. He would be a great face for the Republican Party. But we need somebody like that, maybe even in Massachusetts, to run. So there's ethnicities that are assuming that or Democrats assume they're part of their coalition, and that was the big mistake. I think this election cycle is that Kamala just assumed that all these minority groups were going to be with her, that all these different affiliate groups were going to be with her, and just completely missed. Almost like did a whole Hillary Clinton when she didn't even go to Wisconsin back in 2016. Like just completely missed. And what has she been doing for the last 3.5 years? That's the other thing. Yeah. When you're an incumbent, you have the advantage of going around there. She did nothing. She does not deserve this seat whatsoever. But again, I think all those troubles are gone as of Tuesday the 5th.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point you brought up about how a lot of people just don't even know what the Republican Party stands for. I think that's a big point. Like a lot of winning elections, I've learned, is basically just marketing. Yep. Basically. And I think that that's one of the things that the Democrats kind of beat us to, after the internet and after social media. They were kind of on it before we were because we were conservatives. We were actually like spending time outside and things like that and not like on a screen the whole time. But I think that's one of the things, especially now in Massachusetts with Brad Wyatt as the delegate to the RNC. If anybody doesn't know who Brad Wyatt is, you should look him up. I was running for a school committee seat in Plymouth.
And this guy from Worcester area.
Yeah, this guy from Worcester, who's has one of the highest up Republican positions in Massachusetts, helped me in my school committee race. So I think we need more of that too. And guys saying, hey, look, these are the people you need to target, get them out to vote, and you win. And at that point, it becomes just marketing. At that point.
So you make a great point, Hunter, and that is that marketing for us typically has always been door to door. And I actually still think that is the best thing to do. The problem is we're fielding probably the lowest number of candidates this cycle that we've ever fielded in Massachusetts. There's only a couple races that I think are winnable. I think Ken Sweezey's is winnable. I think Lynn Archambault up in the North Shore. Matt Murator has a chance, I think. But it's going to be a very difficult cycle because we barely had anybody running. You need people running in every district you can to market what the Republican Party and connect with those homeowners with what it's all about. I agree with the digital, but the problem is, the other big problem is there's a third party out on the field, and that is the media. Right. They are working against the Republicans day in, day out. Now, that being said, I'm going to plug that I'll be on NBC 10 on Sunday morning for a live hit talking about politics, and I'll be on election night, Monday the 5th from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock. I picked that slot because I think that's when Trump goes over the top, which is going to be awesome. Seeing all the depressed Democrat faces on the panel while I'm with the NBC host, ha 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 ha. Anyway, but the media is a huge problem, In fact, I love the fact that the owner, Jeff Bezos, Amazon owner, but also owns the Washington Post, actually wrote an article yesterday, posted it, about, and it's on Real Clear Politics, if you can look it up, it's great read, about why newspapers have to get out of the endorsing business. They are showing total bias, and nobody trusts the news anymore or the media anymore because they're just so biased. I mean, I actually listened to Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan today on WGBH radio. I do it just to, I like them actually personally. They've gotten so much more far to the left since I used to do interviews with them. But they talked about, they're so aghast at the fact that the Washington Post and the LA Times didn't endorse Kamala Harris. They should be like, okay, she's a bad candidate. Just admit it. She's a bad candidate. These left-leaning papers didn't do it. But truthfully, you wonder why nobody trusts the media anymore. It's because you have and oh, by the way, Marjorie and Jim did say MSNBC has become just as bad as Fox was or is or whatever you want to say. I mean, just blatantly pro one party. It's fine to call that out. But there's a reason why nobody trusts it anymore is that they just cover up the news all the time. Tried to cover up Biden saying, half Trump supporters, are garbage or whatever it was. I mean,
There's an apostrophe or whatever.
It's just every day. I mean, the whole FJB, right?
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. Was the whole, a network channel didn't want to say what the crowd was actually saying. FJB, right? At a NASCAR race, they tried to cover that up, and that's why it had a life of its own. The American people are smarter than the media thinks they are.
100%.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest stories of this election is that I don't know how you could have trust in the media anymore after COVID, after 2016, after 2020, after everything. But really now,
Russian collusion.
Yeah. I think people are seeing, and you see Trump going on Joe Rogan and getting he's at 40 million views now, which is more than all of Kamala's interviews combined with
crazy.
The legacy media.
It's
yeah.
probably a little bit less than you guys are going to get, but hey.
Just a little bit.
It's good. It's good.
We're close. We'll be
Nice
close.
try, Joe.
You just need a neon light there and we're all set.
But I think that's definitely a huge point that the Democrats are losing. And you see Trump, he goes to Pittsburgh Steelers game, the whole crowd cheers. He goes to college football games, the whole crowd cheers. Tim Walz goes to a college football game, he goes on the screen, nobody even knows who the guy is. So I think, I'm wondering, where are the Kamala voters? I see the signs in the yard, some of them actually coming down. I think that they're being planted in lawns they thought they had, but they didn't. Anyway, I don't meet them out on even in Massachusetts. We're in Massachusetts, and I'm like, where are they? Maybe I'm in a bubble or in a house.
Well, no, I think, you guys were talking earlier how youth is great. I'm just going to give you a nice knock right now. You haven't been around for enough elections to see, but I was old enough to actually be around during the Reagan wins, right, when he won every state but one, Minnesota, where Mondale was from, his opponent at the time. And I think even then, they just gave him Minnesota because I think it was really close, but they just said, let's give it to him. Let's not shame him incredibly. But no, I've seen a landslide for a Republican when the message is right. And I actually think that the Kamala signs and the booing or the non-clapping is a result of what we're going to see, which is probably an electoral landslide, if not a general vote landslide. I really think that most people, as we know, Republicans don't usually get the same polling number. They're usually a few behind. There's a hidden vote that comes out additionally. But right now, I am faithfully reading Rasmussen and Trafalgar every day, probably two of the top 5 polling folks. They are predicting battleground wins in just about all these states. I mean, he's ahead in almost all the battlegrounds right now. New Mexico, which is never going Republican, is actually in play. Virginia is within 2 points right now.
New Hampshire, right?
New Hampshire is 1 point away. If what we think is happening is that there's that hidden vote, I think Trump could win all of that. This could be one of these biggest blowouts, and then you'll be able to tell your grandkids down the road, I remember when Trump blew out Kamala Harris. And I'll say, well, this was a nice bookend for me. My first vote was for Bush. I couldn't vote for Reagan, but I was there for it. But first time I saw a president win in a blowout, and then now. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I think now we have polls in the early voting actually shows us what it's more like. And, once Trump gets in, we're going to go one day, election day, paper ballots, everything. Yep.
So, is this a good time? Can I ask the audience? Do you guys have a question, or else I have a question for you guys? No questions? Okay, I'm going to ask you guys something. Do you guys think we should do day of, just one day voting, or do you guys like the early voting? One day.
One day.
One day voting. Okay. But with the absentee caveat. Okay. And show ID. Yes. Amen. Show ID. You know what's funny? I voted early because right now Trump's saying bank all your votes, and so I did do that. And I put my ID in that little plastic thing where they can scan it, and then you can easily get identified voter. And the woman who checked me in goes, I really like being able to use the ID. It makes it so much faster and easier. And I said, yes. Tell your boss, tell the clerk, who should tell the Secretary of State, who should tell, what are we doing not using our damn ID? Anyway, sorry.
Can you run? I mean, that was a great idea. How about you run? And
That's right. Anyway, by the way, that is my main message. If is anybody here thinking about running who's never run before? Nobody wants to admit it. Don't worry. Okay. There's no target on your back. People want to see you run. That is my goal. My goal is to help, as we heard with Kenny earlier, my goal is to help that next generation take that baton. I have data, lists of names. I have just a ton of ideas, and obviously I know a lot of policy that gets talked about on Beacon Hill. If you want to run, I'm here to help you. If anybody's watching, I'm here to help you. But that's the big thing. You got to have somebody.
Awesome.
yeah.
Lots of people run.
Yeah. So, Massachusetts young conservatives, how do we engage the young people in Massachusetts for conservative ideas? My thesis would be, my hypothesis would be that the only way we're going to get the majority of young Gen Zers who lean right, who may not necessarily be Republican or maybe not even say conservative, but they want the government off their backs. At the very least, low taxes, just let me do my thing. The way we capture them, my hypothesis is that we simply we tell them the way it is. We just tell them the truth. We don't lie through our teeth. We don't go up to Beacon Hill and pass legislation that is killing their futures. We just tell them
do a listening tour that's not really a listening tour.
It's like, oh my gosh,
yeah. No,
it doesn't make any sense. And Gen Zers just want the truth. They just want people to say it to them straight. And I think, but what do you think about that?
So it's funny. I think that you watch these trends, and for a while there, Elizabeth Warren was getting a lot of young women with the pinky promise thing and all that stuff. And there's little catchy ways they tried to do brat summer for Kamala Harris. These little artificial sweetener type of ways of getting sort of what they think is Gen Z to engage with them. But I think you're right. Having two daughters that are Gen Z, I think they just want to know that their future is going to be secure. You guys all went through a lockdown in your high school years, and you're realizing that you can't trust government to make good decisions sometimes. You're like, wait a minute, this whole thing was a giant train wreck, and it really hurt us educationally and economically. Why should I trust government? So right now you've got a natural disaster for the Democrat Party because that's their god is government, right? And so you've got a chance to actually capture. This is the time when we have to get out there and capture those youth that said, yeah, government doesn't always have all the answers. It's not to say that government doesn't have its place. You need the roads fixed. You need the schools open. You need a lot of services that government does provide. However, they shouldn't rule our lives. They should not take over everything that parents do. They shouldn't be pushing God out of the classroom. They shouldn't be. There's so many things that government should not be doing. I think this is the moment to try to have that clarity. And look, we've got great messengers out there. Tucker Carlson does a great job of articulating it. Ben Shapiro goes on to the class, out into the colleges and tries to recruit them. I think one of the next things is to try to get into high school clubs and see if we can talk to kids at the high school age who are either just old enough to vote or about to vote, and let them know that government isn't always a solution, because they've got teachers that are indoctrinating them the opposite. So we've got to engage those young kids and let them know that the Republican Party is the party of the future. Now, Trump's going to make the Republican Party, I think, exciting for the next 4 years, and the media's going to try to do everything to make it seem terrible. Mm-hmm. But Massachusetts, we got a lot of room for growth. You can say that the Republican Party isn't big, not a lot of registrations. That also means that the glass is ready to be filled. It may not be half full, it may not be a quarter full, but it's ready to be filled. and it's ready to be filled by people who have good ideas. So we want to bring those folks in and help them run for office or help them be a part of a campaign where they actually feel like they're making a difference.
So that leads me to my last question. It's almost like you read these or something, but
I did not.
no.
I did not get the questions in advance like the CNN debate. Donna Brazil. Yeah. Just want to make sure
No, but that you're talking about people running for office and good people who have good ideas. One thing you'll hear immediately, almost the first thing you'll hear if you're running for office, basically, don't come out as a conservative. Don't use the word conservative. Don't bring up abortion. Don't bring up any of these things that are conservative values
Culturally
that conservatives
sensitive,
care about. Just be politically correct. What would you say to people who say that? Is it more important to sell your soul, get in office, and win? Because everybody's like, oh, on the campaign trail, I'm going to say this, I'm going to moderate my position. When I get into office, then I'll be a conservative. Never happens. Never. I don't know an example of somebody who was a moderate on the campaign trail and went in and actually enacted conservative policies. So what do you say to people who are actually conservatives who want to run for office? What is more important, selling your soul and winning an election or standing up for the truth?
Talk about a loaded question.
Whoa.
No. Look, I'm all for selling souls at the right price. No, I'm a capitalist. No, I'm kidding. But when I ran as who I was, and if what I was a conservative, then that's so be it. I didn't mind the label. I don't care what the label is. I don't like Nazi, but I don't mind being called a conservative. That's fine with me. But you've got to be authentic and run on issues that you believe are important. And I also think start at the lower level. Like a lot of times these guys who are wealthy, guys and gals that are wealthy, come in and run for U.S. Senate, or they run for governor, or they run for Congress without really understanding how it is to talk to and listen to people. Listening is such a key element to this. People will tell you what's important to them if you just listen. And if you're smart, you actually say, that's a great idea, and I actually write that down, and you try to do it. I filed a lot of bills based on what I heard from people in my district when they told me what needed to be done. I'm not the most brilliant guy in the world. I don't know everything, but listening and then trying to follow through on those recommendations is a key. So if you start at the lower level, you will understand what it's like to make your pitch at the top level. And I think the state is looking for a good conservative. I think the media has to be defeated. I think we need a better, stronger Republican Party to help support that. And I hate to say this. This is the other little secret, dirty secret about Massachusetts Republicans and why we don't always get the help we should be getting from the National Party. I think the National Republican Party needs to have that clown car that they can always point to and say, oh, those idiots in Massachusetts, like the Democrats of Massachusetts, those Looney Tunes in Massachusetts just did this or they just did that. I think the National Party just goes, it's an unsalvageable state. And you know what? We get to point at that state as being the state where people like Elizabeth Warren and John Kerry and Dukakis, they like to point to Massachusetts as producing a really bad crop of liberal Democrats and saying, we don't want to be like them. Look, even not Nikki Haley, New Hampshire, running for governor.
Kelly
Ayotte is saying, don't mass up New Hampshire. We are the punching bag to the rest of the country, Republican-wise. So they almost kind of leaving us where we are to suffer in our misery of never having really being effective as a Republican Party. And by the way, when you do win, you get people like Charlie Baker or Mitt Romney who then happily stab in the back the actual conservatives trying to do stuff. So we're kind of a joke all around. Like everybody uses us as the don't be like them example. Don't be like Massachusetts. And it's going to be hard to shed that. We need to grow up as and become adults and start sending real good people to Beacon Hill to do good work. So yeah, I think don't worry about the labels. Just be who you are. Get up there, do the right thing, and let the labels sort themselves out later. Yeah,
Amen
awesome.
to that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Geoff. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
MassYoungConservatives.com, right? Mark, that's the way to go. By the way, I do have a thing called Real Deal Report, RealDiehl report. It's only on Facebook and Twitter right now, and I'm getting the website set up. So if you want to go take a look or just bookmark it or whatever, I'll be trying to do regular content like you guys are doing on a regular basis. Just getting settled in, finally became an empty nester, finally can start doing some personal projects. That's the next one up on the list.
Awesome.
There you go.
Thank
Thanks,
you, guys.
guys.
Thank you.
God bless.
We'll close up.
So we are here only by the good graces of Mark Anderson here from Massachusetts Young Conservatives. It's a funny story. I've not told you this before, but it has to do with kind of how we met. So basically, we met at a Moms for Liberty event, and you had originally asked us, like, yeah, we'd love to collaborate, we'd love to do something together, and we're like, yeah, of course, like, that's awesome. And then we had a podcast with Toby Leary, which she's actually going to be on in a few minutes here, and you sent us an email after that podcast took off, and you asked to, like, do a podcast with us, and like, oh, maybe, like, we can do an event together, do a podcast. And I interpreted that as, oh yeah, like, yeah, Mark will come on the podcast. We'd love to talk to him. We'll sit down with him for an hour, and then we'll say a few words at one of his events. And then
basically, Sam didn't tell me any of this.
I totally forgot to tell Hunter.
So I'm scrolling through Facebook at work, and I work at a gas station, and I'm on like a Geoff Diehl write-in for Senate or something.
Yeah.
And I see me and Sam's face on there on an advertisement for a Massachusetts Young Conservatives event, and I'm like, what is my face doing in a Geoff Diehl write-in campaign thing? I'm like, I called Sam, like, are we doing a live podcast or something?
And I was like, are we?
All marketing.
So basically, we were coerced to be here.
No, not at all. No, but I couldn't have asked for like a better introduction into this sort of thing, because it was like a bit of a misunderstanding on my part, and then I kind of just like forgot to reach back out. But this is awesome. Thank you so much for putting this on.
I'm glad you're here.
And thank you so much. Round of applause for Mark. So I thought that'd be a funny little introduction. I had not told him that, so I don't know if it's like makes you embarrassed.
He's offended. He needs a safe space.
So tell us about yourself a little bit. Who is Mark Anderson, and why did you start Massachusetts Young Conservatives?
Mark Anderson's a guy from Hanover, Massachusetts, who got involved with politics about 8 years ago, running for selectman. After losing my election, I stayed involved with the politics locally, and then I started to spread out to other regions. I saw a lot of the issues that were out there, and that kept me going. But what started the organization was what I noticed as I was going around from place to place is that there was no outlet for younger people. A lot of them didn't want to talk about politics. They were afraid, what the response of the other person might be. I figured there'd be a great way to have an outlet that would bring them all together so they can feel comfortable speaking about the topics that are going on right now that they feel...
Things that matter to conservatives.
Things that matter to conservatives. Also, it gives them an opportunity to network. So that's because you have some great people that show up for events like this. Mm. And if you're a young person and you can be here, you're going to meet some people that may be able to help you somewhere down the line. So networking is important.
Yeah. I got my start in conservative activism with Turning Point USA. And like in 2021, and I knew nobody, but I just started going to events like this, and slowly but surely you begin to meet people, and your network grows without you even realizing it. And that's what's so cool about these sort of events.
And especially in Massachusetts, there's so little of us that if you go to any event, it tends to be the same people around, and
it creates like a family-like atmosphere, which is awesome.
For sure.
Yeah.
But what do you see like the main goal for the group? Is it just events? Is it like chapters, or what is your ultimate goal?
well, we're starting off small, so it's only Massachusetts.
For sure.
We're one of the few organizations that, actually, I'm going to say one of the few organizations that are real, true conservatives, because there are other organizations for young people, but they're less conservative. Let's say it. Let's put it that way. What's that?
Who said that?
Somebody said rhino. You asked me where I want to take this.
Yeah.
So if I can get the people together and it gets well known, I want to be able to start expanding to other communities. South Shore has the largest group of young conservatives in Massachusetts. We have it right here on the South Shore. If you go west, not so much. Very
I think
little.
as you go west into the more uninhabited areas of the state, you'd think it would get more conservative.
If you want to go that far west, yes.
Once you get past Springfield.
Once you start heading towards Amherst,
Yeah.
right? Right, but I'm talking about immediately west of Boston. You don't get that. North of Boston, they have Republicans, but they are not the same type of Republicans that are on the South Shore. They have different beliefs. It's like two different parties. And this has been, I'm not saying anything new here. This has been known for a long time. It's almost like a worrying fracture, because you had Jim Lyons, that was state committeeman, and he did a great job. Then the North Shore came in and bumped him. Bumped him, and they put Amy Carnevale in, and now they're bringing in a lot of these different types of people that don't hold the same Christian values, conservative values that I believe that we all share.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Massachusetts Republicans think that they need to moderate their position, and they've been moderating their position for 50 years, and 8% of the state is registered Republican. So I don't think that's working out very well here. So I think we need new ideas, and I thank you for starting this group for sure.
Yeah, and if it's one thing that young conservatives don't want is milquetoast moderation and politicians just like lying straight through their teeth to our faces. Like we want people to be real with us. Like just say it how it is, even if it's uncomfortable. Like, because that's actually what's going to move the needle, so to speak, in the state. And honestly, to your point about the Amy Carnevale and Jim Lyons, honestly, I don't care who's in charge, just so long as there is no Democrat that runs unopposed in 2 years from now. It's like so many state representative Democrats are just running unopposed, and that's just unacceptable. So from a Republican Party standpoint, I mean, like that's just your number one job. Like, man, just find anybody.
If they can get 8% of the vote, that's better than.
It's great. If the Democrats can find all the dead people to vote for them, we can surely find some living people to go run against.
Young living
Democrats.
people.
I mean, I don't.
That's what we want to do. Get them to the polls.
No kidding.
Next, there'll be events periodically,
Okay.
and there'll be events that will be geared towards what younger people want to see and hear. Not something stodgy and old and it's going to scare them away. As we proceed with the events, we feel that the word will get around, and we'll get more and more members.
Yeah.
For sure.
What we also want to do is two things: stop the infighting. We have Republicans here in Massachusetts.
Yeah, clap for that.
This does not help the Republican Party if we're infighting. We have to find common ground and get together. I think we can do that. It'll take a little time.
Yep.
Next thing that this organization does that's different than others is that we don't lecture to people and say, well, this is who we support, this is who you should back. I think what our organization would be best at is telling people what the issues are, what's important, asking themselves what's important to them. And then after they know what's important and they know the issues, then they can proceed to choose their own candidate. I don't want to use the word critical thinking, but I mean,
We could use more.
old school critical thinking taught you how to, look at the facts and determine something.
For sure.
So if they can do that, then that would be perfect. So we don't do endorsements.
Yeah.
And we won't. And that's something some of the other groups, the few other groups do, is they do endorsements. So it's sort of a bias there.
Yeah, I think it's definitely good to focus more on the issues, because now a lot of politics is literally just how charismatic a person is, or it's about their vibes or whatever, and that's what they were trying to push Kamala on us, like she was this super charismatic woman. But if you are paying attention, I don't think that that's true. That's something to say for sure.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you kind of just coming on real quick and letting us know.
Thank you very much.
Where can everybody who's listening at home
Yeah.
and everybody here, how can they
we
find you, find events, and find info about the group?
Support the
You
organization.
go to, it's massconservatives.com.
Massconservatives.com. All right.
Mass Young Conservatives.
Massyoungconservatives.com.
That will keep you up to date if you register. Events that come up, you'll be emailed.
All right.
And that really is our only media outlet. We're not doing Facebook. We're on Facebook, but we're not really pushing it. So we're going with the website. And that's where people can see what's happening. And the pictures from here tonight will be posted on that website also.
Okay. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much,
Great.
Mark. And
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So wasn't that encouraging? Wasn't that encouraging? Like the fact that we have, the fact that we have the older generations pouring into the younger generation, into Gen Z, and giving us hope for the future. I mean, this is what we need, and I hope to do this again. Mark, this was a blast. Thank you so much for letting us do this. Our first ever live Sons of Liberty podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everybody.
Me?
It's your birthday?
It's my birthday? What? Thank you guys. Have a good night.